things are going quite well on the weight gain journey. I finished the 12 weeks of alternate day fasting towards the end of August and went through a full month of September, gaining back some healthy weight, right? So far throughout the month of September, I've managed to go from 143 pounds to a flat 150 pounds, right? So a little bit more than a pound a week, so to speak, at least in the beginning. And one thing that I notice is for me to gain weight, I much more prefer to do it with a more raw diet, right? Going from the alternate day fasting and leaning out and then going back in the opposite direction for weight gain and putting in, let's say, more starchy foods, whether it be rice, lentils, chickpeas, red kidney beans, these type of things. A lot of starchy, high protein foods. And it started to make me a little gassy, right? A little heavy. And just really piling into food became a bit much. So going back to my rules of having more of a raw diet, right? So there is room for, the legumes and the rice and things like that, but it's primarily going to be more of a raw journey. So I may eat like a cooked meal or so once or twice a week, but that's about it, right? I would say twice a week, maybe 3 times a week. It depends on how I'm feeling. But for the most part, it's going to be a fruit-based diet. It has been a fruit-based diet with the primary fruit choices being things like bananas, melons, grapes, and citrus fruits. Right? These are the primary staples. And then the other carbohydrate sources are going to be my old-fashioned rolled oats, right? And I'm alternating between cacao and pumpkin spice as far as the seasoning goes. And then as far as my fats, and I'm going a bit higher on my dietary fats, right? Because for me, my personal approach when it comes to a raw diet, especially when it comes to building muscle and things like that, it's mostly going to be a good deal of carbohydrates. But for me personally, I'm going to be increasing my dietary fats a bit more, right? So avocado is going to be a big staple. So every day, I'm pretty much having a whole Hass avocado with around 4 ounces of nuts. That could be peanuts, it could be cashews, almonds, things like this, or sunflower seed kernels. And a big salad, right? So a big leafy green salad with things like the chopped greens, bell pepper, onion, cucumber, mushroom, sunflower seed kernels, pumpkin seed kernels, sprouted green lentils, things like this, right? So that's what the salad would consist of. And I'm adding in more dietary fats into my diet to get a bit more of the omega-3, the omega-6 essential fatty acids, to get more vitamin K, more vitamin E, more vitamin A, things like this, more of the fat-soluble stuff. And get a bit more zinc in my diet and a bit more selenium, right? So the dietary fats, as far as my macros are concerned, would be more so along the lines of 25 to 30%, generally speaking, as far as my diet is concerned. But still maintaining the 50% threshold in carbohydrates. As far as the protein is concerned, protein intake is around 90 grams of protein a day. I don't really go particularly high on protein. It's mostly going to be an energy-rich diet. And I've noticed very significant improvements in my sleep quality, right? Overall hormonal balance, things like this. And the muscle and the strength is really starting to stack up pretty seamlessly. As far as the training is concerned, I'm training 7 days a week, right? But each training session is around 10 to 12 minutes, 15 minutes at the most. So I still stay within my 60 to 90 minutes of training a week, right? That's my rule. And that allows me to manage my recovery very effectively, right? So you can train twice a week, you can train 3 times a week, 4 times a week, or even 7 times a week, as long as you maintain those guardrails. In this case would be the 60 to 90 minutes of resistance training a week, right? The reason why I'm doing this too is because one thing I like to do to stay really locked in and focused, especially on the weight gain journey, is to have more frequent training. So this allows me to really leverage the resources in my diet, whereas those muscle protein synthesis pathways are always on, right? And I'm always stimulating each of the muscle groups in my body, right? Keeping those pathways open on a daily basis, right? So it's an intense yet short 10 to 12 minutes a day. So it's not wearing me out, right? These aren't like really intense workouts to the point where it's just going to have me sprawled out laying across the floor, right? It's not really the goal. The goal is just to create a stimulus that is strong enough to trigger muscle growth, right? Muscle protein synthesis, right? That type of thing. So it's this drip feeding, right? So those muscles are always getting worked, always getting exposure to these repetitive stimuluses that accumulate over time. So this has been working actually very rapidly, especially given the fact that it's very different from what I normally do, which is only training 2 to 3 times a week. So now this is like a full 7 times a week. But my physique has changed very quickly. I've been able to pack on the weight while maintaining the same body fat percentage. Right? So this is particularly how I'm doing it. Now, everybody wouldn't do it the way that I'm doing it. This is just the way that I particularly do it. But you can tell a lot about what you should be doing personally on your journey according to what you've been doing the most, right? So for example, if you've been a person where you normally keep your carbohydrates really low, you have a very high protein, high fat diet, it could be a good idea to really work on improving insulin sensitivity, keeping those glycogen stores full, and really cutting back on that excess fat a bit, right? You'll see some really significant benefits from doing that, right? If you've been training 6 days a week, 5 days a week, very intense, you're feeling a bit run down and your gains are stagnant, it could be a really good idea to really reduce the frequency at which you train. Maybe you just want to train twice a week or 3 times a week, coming out to a total of 60 minutes of training a week. And I've had people who I've coached and they've done that, and they got the train running again, right? And they've been able to really break out of the plateau that they were in for the longest time, right? So you get a lot of the gains and the progress from what you do the least, right? So sometimes that change up is really important. Now, you don't want to change up too frequently, right? You should maintain the same pattern for at least like 12 weeks or so. And that will give you a long enough time frame to be able to demonstrate and show you how effective that approach actually is for you. All right, so you got to be solid about your documentation, count everything, and have a solid plan. All right, so this is how I go about things. So within a year, you can have about 4 plans, right? 4 quarters of the years, 12, 12, 12, and 12, right? So yeah, stay tuned. That's how things are going there. Still going to be on the live stream, so definitely tap into the live streams every Monday morning, where we're going to be answering your questions, whether it be about weight loss, weight gain, diabetes, high blood pressure, kidney disease, and all that type of stuff too. Because even though, I'm on my fitness journey and things like that and gaining weight, but my approach is always going to be health first, right? Improving blood flow, improving gut health, improving metabolic health, blood sugar, things like this, cardiovascular health, right? These things take center stage. If you really want to truly reach your peak and be able to maintain your greatest physique, right? Well, you got to put your health first, because if you put the journey first and really grind out and run yourself down, you may be able to peak and achieve a really phenomenal physique, but it's going to be very difficult to keep it for any length of time. So if you're a human being who would like to live past the age of 70, 80, 90 years old, and you want to still have functioning knees, elbows, lower back, etc., well, don't blow yourself out in your earlier years. Take your time with the process. Okay, always keep risk management at the front of your mind. And it's health first. Everything is health first. Food choice and all that matters. If you want to know my methods in particular, how I go about things as far as training, diet, fasting, my meal prep strategies, all that type of thing, well, that's what Tribe by Noir is about. So you can go to tribebinoir.com and become a member, Tribe by Noir community member. You can hit the link in the description and sign up. I'll see you on the other side.